For 100 years, these mountains went silent, one hunter at a time. Now, something is reversing. Predators are slipping back into the hollows, some hauled home in crates, and some walking in on their own. Most people driving the ridge roads have no idea it's even happening. And the one waiting at number one? The government signed the paper, called it extinct, closed the file, and the sightings never stopped for a single year. Number 15, the otter that clean water brought home. Start with the one you'd never call a predator, but is. The river otter hunts fish, crayfish, and frogs full-time, and by the middle of the last century, it was basically wiped out of the western Appalachian streams. Fur trapping took the first wave. A dense, waterproof pelt was worth real money, and the trappers were relentless. Then the water itself turned against them. Mining runoff, erosion, and raw pollution killed off the fish, and a stream with no fish is a death sentence for an otter. West Virginia held on longer than most and still lost nearly all of them. In western North Carolina, the last wild ones blinked out around the 1950s. So here's what turned it around, and it took two things happening at once. Starting in the 1980s, wildlife agencies across more than 20 states began live trapping otters from healthy populations, often coastal ones, and trucking them back into the mountain rivers a few dozen at a time. Pennsylvania alone released over 150 across 5 watersheds, but those animals only stuck because the water finally got clean enough to hold fish again. The Clean Water Act did as much for the otter as any biologist with a trap ever did. Now they're back in river systems that hadn't held one in 50 years, and West Virginia's population recovered so completely, the state actually reopened a regulated trapping season. Here's why biologists cherish them. An otter is a report card for the whole river. You don't get otters back until everything underneath them, the water, the fish, the insects, is healthy again. So when you spot that sleek brown shape rolling through a mountain creek, you're not just watching a predator return. You're watching the water heal. Number 14, the weasel that hunts porcupines. Here's a predator that came back mean. The fisher is a big dark member of the weasel family, long and low, roughly a house cat's size, with none of a house cat's temperament. Two forces nearly erased it from these mountains a century ago: logging that flattened the old forests it needs, and a fur trade that prized its coat. Across huge stretches of Appalachia, it simply vanished. Then the forests grew back, and so did the fisher pushing down through Pennsylvania and West Virginia. Some of that return came from deliberate releases meant to restock empty woods. Some of it was the animal just walking back in on its own the moment the habitat returned. What sets it apart is what it's willing to eat. The fisher is one of the only animals on this continent that hunts porcupines on purpose and wins. It doesn't try to muscle through the quills, it circles, strikes at the face again and again, and works the porcupine over until it can flip it and reach the one soft, unquilled belly. In places where the fisher returned, porcupine numbers dropped, and you can practically trace one predator's comeback by mapping the retreat of its prey. No press release, no ribbon cutting, just a forest quietly rebalancing itself, one hunted porcupine at a time, and a legend to go with it. Because that blood-curdling scream people blame on the fisher in the dark, science is genuinely murky on whether it even makes that sound. The reputation came back louder than the animal did. Number 13, the falcon they raised in boxes on cliffs. Now, the fastest animal on Earth, and a comeback engineered by human hands, ledge by ledge. The Peregrine falcon folds its wings and drops onto its prey at better than 200 miles an hour, hitting other birds clean out of the sky. And by the mid-1960s, it was gone from the entire eastern United States. The pesticide DDT worked its way up the food chain and thinned the falcon's eggshells until they cracked under the weight of the mother sitting on them. Southern Appalachia had been its stronghold. Then there were none. The rescue was strange and painstaking. Biologists would take falcon chicks, often pulled from risky bridge nests down on the Virginia coast, where young birds routinely fell into open water and drowned on their first flight, and carry them up to high mountain cliffs at places like Shenandoah's Franklin Cliffs and the crags above Big Meadows. They would raise the chicks in wooden hack boxes wedged onto the rock, feeding them with tools and shielding them from any sight of a human face, so the birds never learned to associate people with food. Then they would open the box and let them fly. The whole gamble rode on one hope, that the young falcon would imprint on that cliff and come back in 2 or 3 years to breed there. It is working slowly, and I will be straight with you, unevenly. Recovery in the mountains has lagged well behind the coast and the cities, and the Appalachian breeding numbers have historically sat below the federal goal, though the coastal and urban rebound was strong enough that the Peregrine came off the endangered list back in 1999. But the birds are up on those cliffs again. Hike to Inspiration Point on the Alum Cave Trail in the Smokies at the right moment, and you might watch one peel off the rock face and drop. A predator these mountains raised back into existence, one box on one ledge at a time. Number 12. The Golden Ghost, hiding in winter. Here's a twist on the whole idea of a comeback. This predator didn't return. We just finally figured out it never fully left. Everyone pictures the golden eagle out west, riding thermals over Wyoming rimrock. Almost nobody knows there's a separate eastern population that winters right here in the Appalachian ridges, and has been, quietly, the whole time. For decades, biologists barely knew these birds were out there. Then researchers strung motion-triggered cameras across remote clearings from New York down to North Carolina, baited them with roadkill deer, and waited. The images came flooding back by the thousands, a hidden population that breeds in the far north of Canada, then slides down the spine of these mountains every winter to hunt and scavenge the highest, wildest, most roadless country it can find. They've now fitted trackers onto more than 100 of these eagles over the years, some logging a GPS location every 15 minutes. And the data keeps pointing at West Virginia and Virginia as the heart of the winter range. This one isn't a reintroduction. It's a rediscovery, a bird with a wingspan pushing 7 feet that has been wintering over these hollows all along. And we're only now learning to look for it. And it hunts the emptiest ridges on purpose, specifically to stay clear of us. You could spend your whole life living under its winter flight path and never once glance up at the right second to see it. Quick word before the bigger animals. I've gathered the strangest of these mountain stories, the vanishings, the sightings, the things the old-timers only half explain, into a book called the Appalachian Mysteries Collection. If that's the sort of thing that keeps you up at night, it's there for you. Number 11. The raven that reclaimed the ridgelines. You think of the raven as having always been here. It very nearly wasn't. The common raven once ranged all across the eastern woods, and then human persecution and the clearing of the great forests drove it out, until it clung on in only the most rugged, high, remote pockets of the Appalachians. These mountains became its last hideout, a refuge it barely survived in. Then it came roaring back out. Researchers combed through more than 60,000 raven sightings logged across the region over 70 years and mapped a genuine recolonization. The raven's range across central and southern Appalachia expanded by roughly 40%. The bird spilling back down out of the high country and reclaiming ground in states where it had been considered gone entirely: Kentucky, Ohio, Tennessee, Alabama. and once you know to watch for it, it's unmistakable. This is a bird that plays in the air, rolling into barrel spins, tumbling end over end. One was even clocked flying upside down for more than half a mile. It's got a vocabulary of more than 30 distinct calls, from that deep gravel croak to knocking and bell-like notes you'd swear came from something else entirely. Why did it all come back? A whole stack of reasons landing at once. Protection laws stopped the shooting. The forests matured back into the mature woodland a raven prefers to nest in. And there was suddenly more carrion on the landscape to feed on, from the recovering white-tailed deer herds and, in places, the very elk we're about to get to. This is a predator and a scavenger both, sharp as any animal in these woods. And it rode the entire regional recovery straight back into the sky. So that deep, rolling croak echoing off a ridgetop isn't a leftover from the old days. It's the sound of an animal that clawed its way back from almost gone. Number 10. The coyote that invented itself. For a century, there was an empty chair at the top of these woods. The wolves had been shot out and trapped out completely, and something moved in to fill the vacancy. But not the animal you're picturing. Forget the skinny, scruffy thing skulking across a desert highway out west. The eastern coyote is bigger, heavier, broader through the shoulders. And there's a reason. On its long migration east, it bred with wolves and with dogs, and it carries all of that woven into its blood. It's essentially a brand new predator, one no human being ever planned, approved, or reintroduced, assembled by the wilderness itself to fill a hole we tore open when we wiped out the wolves. And it owns this whole region now, from the deepest national forest right down to the ragged edge of town. Growing bolder every year as it learns people don't reach for the rifle the way they once did. You'll hear it long before you grasp how few of them there really are. One yip cracks open the dark, a chorus answers, and it sounds like a dozen animals rioting on the next ridge over, when it's really just three, the sound smearing and ricocheting around the hollow until the whole mountain seems to be laughing at you. This is the comeback that rewrote the rulebook on its way in. The wild didn't sit around waiting for us to reintroduce anything. It engineered its own replacement apex predator out of spare parts. And now it sings about it every single night, right outside your window. Number 9. The bald eagle. That came off the ledge. Here's the one that proves every other story on this list is possible. The national bird, hauled all the way back from the brink of nothing. The bald eagle is a serious predator, not just a symbol, a 7-foot wingspan built to snatch fish and waterfowl and to bully smaller hunters right off their kills. It rode the same poison down that the falcon did, only harder, until, across the entire lower 48 states, just a few hundred nesting pairs were left alive. The bird stamped on the country's own seal had nearly vanished from the country. But here's where it splits off from the falcon, and why it earns the number 9 spot instead of just repeating the story. The peregrine is a recovery still in progress, fragile, uneven, its mountain numbers still fighting for a foothold. The eagle is the recovery finished. It didn't just squeak through, it came surging back into genuine abundance, one of the most complete conservation turnarounds this country has ever pulled off. Today, they nest along the big rivers and reservoirs threaded all through these mountains. Common enough now that a bird, which was nearly a memory, barely turns ahead. So think of the falcon as the comeback still being fought, and the eagle as the proof that comebacks can actually be won. Every other animal on this list is chasing exactly what the bald eagle already did, which is precisely the hope that keeps number 1 alive. Number 8, the elk. They trucked back after a century. Here's a comeback you can drive to and watch with your own eyes. Elk once moved through these mountains in enormous herds, and then they were gone, hunted down to the very last animal well over 100 years ago. The eastern elk didn't just leave the region. As a subspecies, it went completely extinct. So in the late 1990s, wildlife crews did something audacious. Between 1997 and 2002, they released roughly 1,500 elk brought in from western states onto the reclaimed strip mine land of eastern Kentucky, where the wide-open, grassed-over surface mines turned out to be near-perfect elk country, and, on a smaller scale, into the Cataloochee Valley on the North Carolina side of the Smokies. Against long odds, the herds took hold and multiplied. Kentucky is now the largest elk herd east of the Mississippi River, somewhere north of 10,000 animals. And it has grown so successful, the state now supplies elk to help restock other states. Now, they're a crown jewel of the whole region, drawing tour vans and dawn crowds to watch bulls the size of a small car graze the old fields. But respect the animal behind the postcard. A bull can push 700 pounds and swing a rack of antlers as wide as a doorway. And come the autumn rut, he runs on nothing but aggression. Come spring, a cow will stomp flat anything that drifts too near her hidden calf. Every single year, somebody edges in too close for the perfect photo and learns the difference between an animal that looks tame and one that's simply not interested in you yet. This is the comeback the whole region points to with pride. A giant that went fully extinct here, carried home in the backs of trucks, and thriving all over again. 3 animals left, and this is where the mountains stop being a tidy success story and start being a mystery. Number 7. The rarest wolf on Earth, rebuilt by hand. Here is the most desperate rescue on this entire list. The red wolf is a true southeastern native, leaner and smaller than the gray wolf, a genuinely distinct animal. And it once ranged right across this land. By the last century, it had been hunted, trapped, and squeezed down to almost nothing. So biologists made a staggering decision. They captured the last surviving red wolves left on the planet, bred them deliberately in captivity, and set out to rebuild an entire species from a literal handful of animals. And the southern Appalachians sit right at the center of the long argument over where those wolves belong and whether the mountains could hold them again, because this comeback claws for every single inch. The wild population balances on a knife's edge. It runs headlong into the very coyotes that filled the same empty niche we talked about earlier. And the two interbreed, blurring the exact genetic line biologists are fighting to preserve. It collides with farmers whose livestock share the same ground and whose livelihoods don't always survive a predator moving back in. This is the hardest kind of return there is. Not an animal ambling back over a ridge on its own, but one held in existence by sheer human stubbornness. One captive litter, one nervous release, one hard-fought decision at a time. The rarest wolf in the world, hanging on by a thread that nobody involved is willing to cut. Number 6. The bear that learned it owns the parking lot. Now the animal you think you already understand. Forget the shy black shape melting into deep timber the instant it catches your scent. That bear isn't the one that hurts people. The one that hurts people is the one lounging by the roadside, unbothered, like it's got every right to be there. Black bears crashed hard in these mountains once, overhunted, their forests gutted out from under them. And then they staged one of the great comebacks of all. The Great Smokies now hold one of the densest black bear populations anywhere in the eastern United States. That's the triumph. Here's the sting hidden in its tail. Some of those recovered bears learn to make a living off of us. A bear that discovers, even one single time, that people come with an easy meal quits behaving like a wild bear. It starts working the campgrounds, the overflowing trash cans, the cooler sitting behind a car window cracked an inch too far. And meal by meal, it trades away the wariness that used to keep you both safe. You'll see it on the busy pull-offs, a bear feeding calmly while a ring of tourists closes in with their cameras out, and every one of them mistaking that indifference for something gentle. It isn't gentle. It's a powerful animal that got its numbers back, settled in right alongside us, and unlearned its caution entirely. That's the shadow side of the best comeback in these hills. The more of them come home, the more of them end up living too comfortably close to us. One animal left. It's the one the government officially erased from the books, and the one every hollow swears is still out there, watching right now. Number 1, the cat the map says doesn't exist. The most feared animal in these mountains is the one nobody can prove is here, and nobody up in the hollows will accept is gone. The eastern cougar, catamount, painter, mountain lion, whatever your grandfather called it, was formally declared extinct by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, delisted and struck from the federal rolls in 2018. The last one anybody could confirm was killed all the way back in Maine in 1938. On paper, that's the end of the story, except the reports never stopped, not for a single year. Officials will tell you flatly that there is no confirmed breeding population anywhere in the southern Appalachians, that the hard evidence just isn't there. And in the very next breath, somebody 2 counties over will describe the long, low, tawny shape that slid across his headlights at dusk and was gone before he could take a breath. And here is the crack in the official story that keeps this animal alive. Cougars as a species are not extinct. Western mountain lions are actively pushing their range eastward, and young males have been confirmed wandering distances that sound flatly impossible. One of them walked roughly 1,500 miles, from South Dakota all the way to a highway in Connecticut, before a car finally killed him and DNA confirmed the journey. So the animal people swear they're seeing is not a campfire story. It's a genuine 200-pound predator, built to kill things far larger than you, and everything else on this list is quietly insisting the wild is coming home. That's the terror and the pull of this one, wrapped together. Every returning otter, every recolonizing raven, every eagle dragged back from the edge whispers the same impossible question about the cat the map refuses to admit is out there. Why not this one too? The science says unconfirmed. The mountains say it's already back. And that gap between what a biologist can prove and what a whole region swears on its life it has seen is exactly where the dread lives and breathes. Because you cannot prepare for the predator, the map won't even admit exists. So the silence was never permanent. The hunters are coming home to these ridges, some we carried back in crates, some that walked in uninvited and built themselves from spare parts, and one the government still officially calls extinct, while the sightings keep piling up. If you want the rest of these mountain mysteries, the ones no biologist will ever confirm, that whole collection is waiting for you in the Appalachian Mysteries collection. Drop a comment with the animal your hollow swears has returned, the one the biologists haven't caught up to yet. And if this changed the way you'll see that next quiet trail, the next video is already waiting on your screen. Go ahead and let it play.